from the China Regional of the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. I am your host once again, Adrian Healingstat Archerlock, and joining me on the desk for this incredibly hype series. Winner, of course, goes to the global finals. We got Sloot and we got Rich. Now, I do want to pull it back just a little bit and say that Rich has been giving Sloot a little bit of a hard time for the lack of hair, I think. But
I wouldn't say a hard time.
Rumor has it, though, before you started casting with Rich, you actually had a full head of luscious hair. Is that correct?
It's quite true. It's quite true. Now it all belongs in his pillowcase.
Well, it's important to keep a good hair-life balance, but these teams also have something on the line here. They have to get to that global finals. They have to win this next series. Guys, looking at CBA's last performance, how do you think they did? And I mean, do you think they can take it, go all the way?
I mean, it's possible. I was really expecting Skyline top to, well, come on top. I mean, honestly, no pun intended that time. I was really expecting them to pull ahead, and they just performed so well, especially with Skyline D. They had a relatively close series, even though it was an 0-2 in the end. But, I mean, CBA really stepped it up.
Yeah, and I mean, Rich, I want you to take us through this a little bit because it's such a story, such a journey for CBA. They lost in round one, and they've come all the way through that lower bracket to get here.
Hey, look, we've casted quite a few shows together. We've been around the world together, and it's been a lot of fun. And there are not many teams that we've seen go on grueling losers brackets and able to actually do the unthinkable and reset, play that double best of three. It's a very difficult thing to do. It happens, but it's really hard. Both of these teams, you just look at what they have to do. CBA would need to have gone through the entire losers bracket, then reset in the grand final if they want to win, and then SunSky would need to get their reset against the team that they already lost to without even picking up a single dungeon. So right now, if you are a fan of our team that's already waiting in the grand final, you probably feel pretty confident.
Yeah.
It's just brass tacks. They look pretty good to win the entire thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, CBA, they've come all the way through that lower bracket, but they really are the underdogs here. SunSky are someone who've been having such close series. They narrowly lost out to Skyline D, and now they really are the favorites in this one. They're the team looking to play here on this stage at the global finals representing China. And do you think CBA have it? What's in it to actually take this one, Sloot?
I mean, I think so. You know, we're starting to get to a point where we did see a bit of kind of issue with the Disc Priest in that dungeon in the series. We saw the Halls of Valor. Sometimes they're falling just a bit behind with their compared to their Paladin and Resto Druid counterparts, but they certainly have what it takes. I mean, you know, you could have asked that before last series, and, you know, we didn't really know CBA versus Skyline top, and they pulled it off. So, I mean, anything's possible here. I think they can pull it off.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things we need to talk about when we're talking about the composition on Skyline is they did bring out that Windwalker Monk, which is something we did want to see, Rich.
Yeah, it is definitely something that we wanted to see, and Adrian, it's one of the strongest DPS classes that you can bring out right now. It has pretty much everything that you could possibly want. It lives, it deals really good damage, and it's got good stunts. So it has pretty much everything. But the other thing that I do really want to touch upon is the fact that, look, obviously I've already said for both of these teams it's going to be difficult for them to win the entire thing. A lot of prize money is on the line. Seeding's obviously important, but this match is just so crucial. This match matters so much for that stage. Like you said, this is going to determine the two teams that actually make it through.
Yeah, this is what everyone wants to win, right? I mean, the grand finals, like, they will just be the one best of three, but it really doesn't matter. This is the game that matters. There's a bit of money on the prize money. You can talk about the seeding, of course, going up against the number one or a number two from another region, but qualifying is the reason that all these teams are here, too.
You're either coming over here into the U.S. or you're not at this point, so it's going to be a pretty big deal.
Well, I mean, money as well. It's pretty lucrative to be able to get on this stage because the prize pool is elevated for that tournament. The LAN is going to have even more money on the line. This is just an appetizer for these teams. If you can qualify, yes, you get that small icing on the cake, which is going to be the prize money here, but then you get to qualify and play for even more.
And it's also just such a good opportunity for these teams to get their names out there and their players' names out there by being on the stage too.
Yeah, because we haven't met many of these guys, and of course, that's going to be a very exciting opportunity for us. I know that a bunch of the analysts want to talk to them and find out, like, get their heads in a little bit. What is their strategies? Because some of them have been a little bit off. But I do want to talk about the key. Now, Dark Heart Thicket is an instance we've seen a couple of times, but the real difference this time is we're moving into our third affix pool, which means we're bumping the keys up to 24. And Sloot, obviously, you're an expert when it comes to grinding these really high keys. How much more difficult is a 24 from a 23?
I mean, it's definitely a bigger leap up from that, the 22 versus 23, from the 23 to 24, a way bigger leap. I mean, it's just an exponential increase as we go along the mythic keys, starting at low to high. So you're expecting to see the bigger increase in numbers. I'm expecting to see, I want to say less risky strats, but certainly a bit more conservative play from some of the teams, perhaps.
Yeah, and Dark Heart Thicket, of course, it's an instance we've seen a couple of times throughout the Mythic Dungeon Invitational already, but Tyrannical tyrannical does make it a little bit challenging.
Yeah, Xavius is going to pop people. Like, let's be honest. That's kind of the fight that I'm thinking of right now, but there are plenty of other challenges that these guys are actually going to have to deal with, and these bosses are going to be hitting very hard. But Ted, you're no stranger to the thicket.
I'm certainly not, Rich.
I'm not looking forward to these guys casting this instance, by the way. Rich was even saying that he's got a whole list of things to say, so we'll have to see how that one goes. But of course, I am kind of looking forward to throwing these teams straight into a 24 because I love watching people die.
Yeah, let's throw them right into the thick of it.
It's starting already. I haven't even thrown them into the game and it's already starting. But let's have a look at these other affixes in the key. We talked about the tyrannical. We also have the explosive and the sanguine. So for some of the viewers at home who aren't so familiar with these affixes, Ted, maybe you can take us through what the teams are trying to play around here.
Yeah, so we do have the sanguine, which is essentially when a trash mob dies, it'll spawn a pool under the corpse that will heal any trash, or actually any enemies that go through it, and of course damage players as well. So it's important for these players to constantly kind of kite and move out of these pools. And of course then we also do have the explosive affix, so the trash mobs will periodically, well, actually all the mobs in the dungeon will periodically randomly spawn some large green fell orbs that if you fail to kill in time will explode and damage everybody in the group for 50% of their max HP.
Yeah, really not the worst key as far as the affixes are concerned. The really scary part is that jump. Like going to a 24 and it's tyrannical and you're in Dark Heart Thicket, that's what makes it really difficult. We don't necessarily assume them to go on these crazy pulls that explosive is going to be slowing them down that much. Like that's already kind of taken into account. And then Sanguine, let's be honest, that's one of the easier affixes that we actually have in the tournament.
It's really just going to be the bosses. That's going to be the scariest. Yeah. And Shade of Xavius for sure, you know, lots of one-shot potential with the Nightmare Bolt, the explosion at 50%, and we're going to see some Pridas coming out from the teams, but also just Oakheart as well. I mean, that AoE Stomp is going to be really devastating, tons of tank damage with that crushing grip, so all the bosses just have potential to just wipe anyone.
Yeah, and everything in between those two bosses too, right? Drezeron's not going to be an easy one to go up against either. I think if you see even mistakes come in on the first boss as well, the cat leap, it could really be a little bit dangerous as well.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff to watch out for, But of course, these players are playing on the tournament server, so they do have that kind of even playing field. And I do want to talk a little bit about the compositions here, because, I mean, both these teams have been running quite standard compositions. We talked a little bit about the Windwalker Monk, but of course, one of the big things you're going to be watching for at home is that Discipline Priest, the kind of hope and dreams of Jack, who will be casting the Grand Final, and probably want to see that there versus this Holy Paladin on CBA. But we are ready to dive into the game. This will be our 24 key playing out on Dark Heart Thicket. This is going to be a big match for both of these teams. CBA versus Sunsky. The winner qualifies to the global finals. This next best of 3 will decide who represents China alongside Skyline D. Now we get into the thick of it, as you were saying, Rich. Casters, take it away.
Show me the comps. All right, now we're going to get a look at what these guys are going to be playing. Ted,
so no Windwalker Monk here for Sunsky this time. They actually opt to use the Warrior instead. I think, yeah, it is indeed an Arms Warrior. So pretty standard pull here. We're seeing first 2 packs combined together. We're getting the cats that will leap out, of course, the owls that need to be interrupted. Otherwise, they will disorient a bunch of the players. In the meantime, we're having a mass stealth over from Team CBA going all the way over to the Hippogriff pack.
Yeah, they are just going to flee away from that first pack. They're going to get this pull going now here. What do you think of that skip? Because a lot of the times we actually see the skip coming a little bit later on the Bears.
Yeah, you know, we see the Bears skipped sometimes. We see the cat skip sometimes. Later, we see some of that the Keeper pack skipped as well. So lots of different strats that these teams can implement indeed. They do opt to pull this one Grizzly by itself here for Sunsky on the left side of your screen, of course, and CBA still dealing over with that Hippogriff pack. They kill that last one there, and now they need to deal with these 2 Runers, make sure that they're constantly interrupting them as well.
I do want to point out, and this is going to come into effect a little bit later, it's interesting that we see both of these teams running mages. When we get deeper into this pool, obviously this is a best of 3 series. We know that there are certain dungeons that mages can really wreak havoc on. Now, when you're in this scenario, that might actually change how they pick, the fact that both teams have actually locked in mages for the entirety of this series. But we will put our attention now back onto this match. Just wanted to note that for anyone who's paying attention at home.
They can't really wreak havoc, though, because they are mages, not demon hunters. But nonetheless, they will be sapping and moving past this cat pack. So Team CBA really skipping a lot of this first trash, meaning we're going to see some definite kills with some of those Keeper packs later. Now, it seems that a couple of the cats on the side pull it. I'm not sure if that was on purpose there. We do have a death from the demon hunter on Team CBA, while in the meantime, Sunsky failing to kick one of those star showers. Tons of rain coming down. Both teams now, CBA making sure to dodge those. Looks like they're going to have a full wipe. It seems somebody got just a bit too close on that left side there.
This is really why they were trying to dodge those cats as quick as possible, and you got to be really cathletic if you want to get around these mobs.
Okay, Rich, I'm tired of your cat attitude. Okay, so now moving over, Sunsky, dealing with the rest of those hippogriffs. Now they too will be jumping down where, as we saw, and it's actually something we usually comment on this dungeon, there's not a lot of space to maneuver down here once you jump down. A lot of trash packs on the side that you want to avoid. Of course, CBA failing to do so this time. They do go past the Grizzly once again upstairs. Meanwhile, Sunsky pulling that 3-pack that was opted to skip earlier by CBA.
And I want to point out too, this wipe by CBA really could be a catastrophe, and the reason is because Sunsky didn't do that initial skip. So they actually have a lot more trash already downed, as you can see, 22% right now, and they're whittling away at these cats as quick as possible, and then they're going to be moving on to that next boss. So CBA has this wipe, already 5 deaths against their time.
The problem is here again, CBA, the Paladin tried to get back. I hope he got a failure detection pylon down. He didn't deal. He was just trying, just by a whisker, pull that extra pack. They move up. They wipe him again. Luckily, does get the self-res out. Will be able to res his teammates there in the meantime. But, I mean, that's already 5 deaths on the board for them. That's a ton of time considering how close these matches have been.
If this was my start to this run, if I was CBA, I would honestly be kidding myself.
You absolutely would. Sunsky now dealing with that last pack before the double bear pack coming up, before Dallas, the first boss. Now, most teams we do know, at least especially in a fortified setting, they opt to kind of skip that double bear pack. They get the tank to pull it to the side. Meanwhile, the group safely runs to the right side of the screen. It is important to note as well for these bears, they don't usually carry weapons around. They actually usually use their bear arms.
Yeah, they're going in with their bare hands. That pun barely worked for me, but now they are going to go. It looks like they're actually going to they are going to go for the skip here. They're going to be able to have the mage run through, grab the aggro. Oh, no, mage just stealthed on through, so he's not actually helping the rest of the group, maybe?
He went to start the RP. Now, I'm not sure why he by himself would go there if they're planning on not skipping the bears together. Perhaps getting himself in a bear position.
Oh, there we go.
It's actually the mage that's going to be the one that does the skip instead. That way he can invis. Cauterize has prog. Okay, actually, he's not even invis.
Yeah, that was a little. So he actually used the invis to get into position, which was a little bit.
Yeah,
weird. That's kind of what threw me off, because typically you maybe see you actually use the invis after to drop aggro, but ultimately they're just going to use a res that's only going to be 5 seconds off. This still totally does work. They didn't have to use invis pots or anything of the like, so they'll have their pots here when they pull this boss, and now instantly going to go ahead and pop that bloodlust there, and you can see the cat is just going to jump out. The Archdruid has several forms here. The cat form is one of them, going to jump out onto the healer, and having the Disc Priest here, it looks like the Disc Priest is going to be their chosen target to deal with that mechanic.
Yeah, not a bad target, pre-shielding himself prior to that jump. Now, there are 2 cat form transformations per bear form transformation. The cat form, as Rich alluded to, will jump on the furthest target, in this case being the healer for Sunsky, and after 2 transformations, he will do a bear form transformation, doing a massive frontal punt on the tank, which can have their back onto a wall to make sure that they don't get hit too far, which will also allow Dallas to charge into the nearest object and stopping his transformation.
Yeah, if you are the tank and you don't have your back to the wall, that can really be an unbearable mechanic. So I do like how they're dealing with this here. It is relatively standard at this point, but still, I want to point out the Disc Priest is dealing with this very well. Those shields are masterfully dealing with that mechanic. A lot of times we see druids, actually resto druids, pre-bear forming it and things like that, but we can see, maybe this is why Jack hypes up Disc Priest so much, and ultimately this first mechanic, oh wow, it's starting to hit hard now.
Huge chunk of HP though there. Keep in mind, after one of those jumps, it does leave a grievous wound on the target that will not go away until the target is healed above a certain threshold. Disc Priest dealing with that wall right there. Now, as long as he can survive the leap in the first place, it's really not that big of a problem.
Yeah, it really isn't. You don't want to procrastinate, though, when you actually do heal it up, and maybe the mage at some point will switch out, be the furthest target, and you can actually ice block one of them if the healing does become too much. But it looks like our Disc Priest here is dealing with it just fine, not dipping nearly as much as did on the last leap, and now only 35% of that health is going to be remaining, but I'm assuming they're probably out of hero at this point.
Yeah, Team CBA, of course, starting to catch up a bit, really not too far behind in terms of the damage on Dallas.
It's the trash.
It's the trash, yeah, so there is an 18% differential between these 2 teams, but not just that, Rich, there's also a 6 death differential in favor of Sunsky at the moment, so CBA certainly have their work cut out for them right now.
Definitely do. That wipe at the beginning, and we've already talked about it. It was a pretty big big wipe to have. They went for that initial skip, so now they're behind in trash, and they are behind as far as deaths are concerned, but they are catching up in boss damage right now, and a lot of that's going to be just their entire team firing on all cylinders here.
And of course, the tank from Sunsky, they're not doing the best job during that Ursine form, making sure that he has his back to a wall. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but you do have to get your back to that wall. They lost a bit of DPS time as a result of Gladalis chasing him out and charging him out into the distance there. At this point, they really should just rotate the boss to that vine wall, which is actually they're on the opposite side. That's where the bears are. They should have Gladalis on the far side towards the exit, because they just naturally make up a lot of that movement time rather than just sitting out here at the entrance of Gladalis' area.
Not only does it allow the boss to go berserk, but also you lose just so much time when you actually walk after that boss fight is done. This is a race. We've talked about this in the last MDI. We've talked about it when we've casted Tespa together. Those little things, those little positional things, making sure that you kill the boss and that the farthest area that you can be pushed on the map does really add up. But right now, CBA going to be able to get the boss down at the same time, still trailing in that trash, though. We're going to have to see how they deal with the mobs in the future of this dungeon. But we should talk about these pools here, because quite a few of these pools can be quite dangerous.
Right, you are, Rich. Now, here we've kind of warped out of the cat-bear area, thank God, but we are moving on to kind of these flower dryads. Now, because of Sunsky's kind of dominance in the trash percentage at the moment, they will likely skip that double keeper pull ahead just a bit further from here that we will see. While in the meantime, I do fully expect CBA to have to pull a lot of those keeper packs, including likely the optional one keeper pack on the side. These flowers, not really anything too much to be concerned with, but you're often going to be pulling a lot of them.
That's a good one. We haven't heard that one before. Now we are going to see, just using a little bit of CC there to get by that flower. This is actually one of the most interesting areas, though, seeing how teams really do pull it. As we already mentioned, there are a lot of different skips that are available, and there's a lot of different options that you actually have with trash. And we've seen this strategy quite a few times in the past.
Yeah, so big pull coming up here with the Skystep Potion from the Blood DK, wanting to make sure he grabs all these flowers, really putting the pedal to the metal, making sure he grabs everything together. He's going to round everything up and do a big AoE grip here. Now, the way they're pulling here, the reason that you pull these flowers around the house is because, and the reason you pull them so far as well, is because the auras from the Keeper, which aren't too far from here, you can see them in the background there, they have a natural aura that heals all flowers within their range for, I think, 5% HP every second, something like that. So you want to make sure you pull them nice and far, get them away, have room to kite with the Sanguine so you don't accidentally kite them near the Keepers during the Sanguine. Well done here by them. They finished it off, and I'm fully expecting to see them skip that double Keeper pack coming up.
You just don't want to deal with the Keepers, right? You want to get right to the root of the problem. That's exactly what Sunsky was able to do with this pull. We saw a few moments where it looked like it was going to be a little bit hairy, but this Disc Priest has been able to heal up the team, and you can see level of confidence that the Disc Priest has, but not able to get out nearly as much damage as probably wanted to there because of the amount of pressure that was put on. Now they're going to go for, they got about 2 more of these pulls that you really do have to work quite hard for before they get to the Uis.
So the Mage, again, being the one to pull the trash to the side here, this time does use the Invis to get away after destroying him with that Dragon's Breath, and they will move up. They have a nice favorable pat timing here where the Dryad and the 2 flowers, the remaining ones prior to, of course, those Guis, prior to Okart, the second boss, are lined up here. They're going to finish those off and then likely get ready for that bigger pull with the 5 mobs that you need to kill in order to get access to Okart, the second boss of the dungeon.
And Okart was one of the ones that we highlighted before we even did get into this dungeon. It can be very scary. I want to just reiterate, in case you're just tuning in right now, the difficulties of these dungeons are going to be higher. There is a lot on the line here. This is going to be the losers bracket final. Whoever wins this goes to the LAN and goes to the grand final to compete for first place. So we are dealing with 24 keys here in Darkheart Thicket.
And some of the biggest concern and difficulty in this dungeon particularly is going to be the bosses. So there's going to be a lot of focus on that, making sure that they honestly just don't get one-shot by some of the abilities, wearing some more defensive legendaries, perhaps like Pridus, especially once we're reaching Shade of Xavius, and maybe even Okart because of that AoE stomp. So indeed, Sunsky finishing off that 3-pack there, and then in just a moment where they're going to pull the rest of these GUIs here that I don't know why I keep calling them that, but they're Dwellers, and they're going to AoE them down and then get ready to pull Okart. In the meantime, of course, CBA on the right hand of the screen, also doing the similar skip and dealing with that patrol.
Yeah, I don't know why I started calling them ooey gooeys, but I've been doing it for about a year now.
We did it last MDI too.
They just look ooey and gooey to me, so I have been calling them that, but yes, they are in fact the Dwellers, and sometimes they can be painful to look at, and when they look at you, it can be equally as painful. But let's actually jump over to Okart. Sloot, how does this boss work in a nutshell?
So So there's a few abilities we have to watch out for, generally on 30-second timers. First, he does a frontal breath on the tank. He will also do crushing grip on the tank that does a tremendous amount of damage every 30 seconds. You really have to, it's good for a DK, right? They have that Vamp Blood, they have the AMS as well, and then also he's going to spawn some flowers periodically that you want to usually make sure you clear, although some strats call for not clearing it in order to kind of multi-dot and get extra damage. Likely they will be clearing them. And then of course the last ability is the one you just saw there. That AoE Stomp does a ton of damage. It does a tremendous amount of damage.
Really? That's the best pun you got there? Birch, please.
Rich, please, all right. Super inappropriate. That was super acorny. Now, Oakheart tossing the tank down after that grip does a bit of minor splash damage to some of the targets. You want to make sure that you immediately turn the boss around and get ready for the next 30-second cycle here. Now, the stomps do come out about on a 30-second rotation as well. We do have a death coming down there. Like I said, a lot of damage coming out from them. I guarantee that more people are going to die if they don't get some of those pre-shields or are wearing Pridus. Now, you can consumption every other stomp because consumption's on that 45-second CD. The DK can help a ton with that, but the problem is it's not a gradual amount of damage. It's a huge spike hit, and actually there should be a bit of an advantage here for that Disc Priest because he can pre-shield before that AoE stomp.
And also they do have that battle res too, so they should be a-okay to get down Oakheart here. And now we can see that CBA is suffering quite a bit of damage. The entire team getting chunked. The Holy Paladin struggling to get them back up. Looks like should be able to here, but they are very far behind on this boss at this moment, and they are still trailing in trash as well. They've started to catch up a little bit. The gap has been narrowed just a little bit. They have stemmed that initial lead that Sunsky did get, but Sunsky is still looking very dominant here. If they can get through Oakheart without another death, they're looking very good inside this dungeon. But once again, that stomp just going to prove to be such a, oh, there we go, such a scary mechanic.
No,
it's going to take down two. They
go
only have one
down.
battle res. This could just be it as well. You have to hope that the battle res is on the tank.
We do have the Cauterize proc as well on the mage too. This is an absolute disaster for Sunsky, and the problem is they're starting to let those roots which spawn the smaller blossoms get out of hand, and of course those are totally viable to spawn explosives as well. And as you said, that's it, full wipe from Sunsky on Oakheart. They're gonna have to run all the way back, and they're going to have to re-pull and re-skip that double keeper pack again. In the meantime, CBA working on Oakheart, still only at 62%. You know, it should kind of resonate with the viewers at home. We have seen Darkheart already before, but not at the 24 level. It's taking so long to kill these bosses. Luckily, actually, Sunsky does manage to get that pylon off before they die, so they don't have to do the run back and the skip.
They save so much time. If they can get it down here, they'll checkpoint here as well, so that is going to prove well. But as sorry about that, they actually will checkpoint at the last boss, but hopefully they get it down here and they don't have to worry about that. But the big thing to note is going to be CBA. As long as they can get this down in this century, they will pull ahead. They will be able to find the lead, and they're looking very strong, and we're seeing the strength of the Holy Paladin as well. Oakheart now dipping below 50% health at 43% right now, and we're waiting to see how much damage this next stomp puts out.
Yes, I mean, obviously that wipe was hugely in favor of CBA there, not only to allow them to kind of surpass, but also Sunsky now tying the death differential between the two groups. It was 7-2 before. We're now looking at 7 apiece, so that's completely even. CBA, you know, 40% ahead of Sunsky now, still going through that 30-second rotation every time with the grips and the stomps, making sure everyone's healthy and topped off, dealing very quickly with that, using that Blessing of Freedom from the Paladin, making sure he runs through those roots so that everybody can cleave them down and DPS them quickly, keeping the play field really clean as to not have to babysit those fellow explosives too much.
Yeah, now the thing is with CBA as well, they're probably just going to have to pull pretty much, obviously you can do some creative things on your way to Trezoron, but they're probably going to have to pull everything on the way to Xavius with the amount of with the amount that they have, 65% towards trash. Sunsky could potentially go for a few skips there, but we're starting to get pretty even in the trash department as Oakheart is about to tumble down for CBA.
Yeah, not too far along either. I do expect both of them will likely end up skipping the last pack. We'll have to see exactly what they do. Some groups also skip the last pack plus the kind of 4 bats before Xavius. It really depends how their percent's going to line up by the end of it, so we'll have to see. Nonetheless, CBA looking like they're very stable at the moment, about to down Oakheart at 5% right now, while Sunsky still working away at that 48% mark.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, they're definitely on the back foot here, but this attempt has looked so much better. The Disc Priest is doing a great job at keeping everyone up at the moment. We're not seeing those crazy chunks like we did last time. By this point, we had already seen, I believe, one DPS go down and a battle res be invested, but it is going to be CBA who gets down Oakheart first, and now they can move forward on their way to Dresseron.
Yep. So here, not too much trash left before we actually get back to Dresseron, but a couple pulls to note here. Now, we do have a lot of, once again, these gooeys, these slimes, but also these blood-tainted furies, the large water, the blood elemental that you see before you. Two abilities that you want to watch out for is that charge that we're seeing right now, and also a death coming in, actually, unexpectedly on the trash. I'm not sure if there was a clip there for the trash on the ground, because those slimes do explode for damage from the Havoc Demon Hunter, who was just kind of not paying great attention there, or if he got clipped by the charge from the blood-tainted fury, which actually ends up healing the fury as well. So you got to be careful with that pack. Now, the reason they're kind of dragging it away here is to make sure that when they kill it, it does split into 4 lesser elementals that eventually will transform into larger elementals too. They don't give you percent. It's just a waste of time. So what you'll see is that everybody's going to kind of run away from this fury at the end and make sure that the rage finish it off.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Those extra mobs that do spawn, they're also quite dangerous on a 24. So you really don't want to have to be dealing with them at all. They're going to be able to get past that. They should be able to get the res up without a problem. But CBA hasn't really pulled ahead as much as you would want to in their current position, right? They got Oakheart down first, but Oakheart's about to fall for Sunsky. They can very much get back into this.
Yeah, and it's taken a while. I mean, in the entirety of everything we just commented on for CBA, Oakheart only just now fell over for Sunsky. They'll also be moving on to that first trash pull that we just saw CBA go through. They have to be careful here as well, because we do have that cauterized proc on the mage. There's a lot of these slimes here, and again, each one of these ads has the potential to constantly spawn these Fel explosives, which is a lot of babysitting. They do well to move past that second Fel Fury elemental. Most people don't want to deal with that, and we are, of course, here at this third boss, Dresseron, Rich.
And now we're even on trash, so this is the first time that we have really seen this, and of course, it is going to be CBA who gets to pull Dresseron first, and they have the Rogue. We've brought this up so many times in MDI, but this is going to be most likely one of those situations that we could see those extra ads used with the Shuriken Storm.
Wouldn't be shocked to see a couple, and right away, as you said, the Blood TK does run in and pull 3 whelps. But again, you know, there's a bit of a silver lining here, right? They do have to deal with those Fel explosives spawning from the whelps. They should have no trouble with that. The greater good is, of course, for that extra damage that they get from the whelps being up. Now, we do have 3 abilities to watch out for here. One is the Frontal Breath on the tank, which will target the closest target, the highest aggro target within melee range. So if the tank, in this case, is, you know, running out to grab some of the whelps, will retarget one of the melee or whoever's closest. And of course, we do have that downdraft pushback that will push you harder and harder the further you are from the center of the boss's hitbox, which can cause you to get some extra whelps by accident. And lastly, Rich, of course, is that cave-in that you can bait away from the boss.
Okay, so one thing that I just want to note right now is obviously there's a little bit of pad going on because the whelps are there, but legitimately CBA is pumping. They're melting this boss down. Dresseron already dipping below 60%. That's a lot of whelps, though, to have to deal with, so they're actually going to just have to invest AoE to get those down as well. You see that stun coming out there. Sunsky hasn't even yet to pull the boss. Once again, they are going to pull ahead in the trash department, back up at 86%, just in case you didn't see that. But the big thing is the single target damage that CBA is getting out, even when you don't include that additional pad, is quite high. It's going to be tough for Sunsky to catch up here.
Yeah, there's not too much concern for the tank surviving with the amount of whelps, as you said, as much as if it starts to get too out of control, you could have some unlucky spawns for the orbs during one of the downdraft pushbacks, and then if one of them pops during that downdraft, likely somebody is going to die, so they really have to be careful with that. We do see both teams on both sides pulling those whelps and trying to really get that extra single target damage in off of them. In the meantime, of course, the Disc Priest getting pushed around by the winds, and the mage doing well to bait that cave-in far away from the boss.
Yeah, doing a very good job to make sure that that bad area is going to be away from the rest of the team that wants to be doing that melee damage. You don't want to have to move the entire boss around, so the mage is going to be able to deal with that very well. Cheat Death, though, going to proc over on the side of CBA. Definitely want to make sure that they keep that road safe now, and the question is, will it actually be reset in time for Xavius? The cheat death is so pivotal.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's rough.
If it just procced here, I think it's a 6-second CD if I'm 6-minute CD if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be a while before that is back up. Depends how much. Now, keep in mind, CBA do have to kill more of the trash in the upcoming tunnel than do Sunsky. Sunsky, I'm predicting, I believe, will have to pull, well, the first 2 packs for sure. I don't know if they have to kill the bats as well, but they will certainly be skipping skipping the last 6-pack prior to Xavius. CBA will likely have to kill 1 extra pack to match their percentage.
Skip the 6-pack salute, but we're going to see CBA running on through right now. They're going to try to get that pull going. They obviously were able to get that boss out of the way nice and quick. They are going to be moving past Rezeron right now, but I do want to highlight one more time, not having this cheat death could be very scary. You look at this composition, it's a very good composition to actually deal with the damage that Xavius can put out. Xavius has a lot of these scary, almost one-shotty mechanics when you are in this 24 difficulty, but when you have a team like this, oh my god, we're going to see the Death Knight just get chunked for a second there, but luckily doesn't pop Purg, because Purg could be important, but the Mage is going to have some immunities. Carterize should be off cooldown by the time that they actually get there, so they do have a lot going for them, CBA.
So, of course, there is 1 pack that patrols here, and then, of course, 1 pack on its own. They obviously wait to combine both of them. They decide to pull 2-pack together. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the popular rapper 2-pack Shakur here. They do kill both of those packs together and then move on.
Those 2 packs, though, they could do biggie damage.
Yeah, I mean, all eyes on them in the meantime, Rich. They will be moving over to the Bat Pack right now. Of course, Team CBA will have to kill this, and definitely that 6-pack that we were discussing earlier. You know, you might like your 6-pack, but 1K goes all the way for me. They'll be killing this. Now, there's nothing too dangerous about these Bloodseekers right now. They do a ton of damage to the tank. There is a minor disease dot that they put up that leeches a bit of health back to them, but the disease could be dispelled by the Paladin in this case. Not too big of a deal. As long as the blood DK is stable, they'll be killing this and then rearing up to kill that last bit of trash. Whilst in the meantime, of course, Sunsky on the left side of your screen will be downing Dressron momentarily. Pretty clean kill from them as well, and they'll be moving down into this log as well.
Obviously, though, I do want to say for the danger for the pack that CBA was dealing with, it's one of those scenarios with explosive when it is mo mobs, mo problems. You're going to get more of those explosives actually spawning, but they're able to deal with it masterfully. A nice juicy pull for them, and now they can go on over to the last boss. So, like we said, though, they need to get all the trash. Are they going to be able to do it, though, Sloot? Is this actually going to be enough?
I think, actually don't know.
It's actually a little sketch.
I don't think you actually get 11% from the last pack. In fact, they just killed it, and they're nowhere near, so they're going to have to backtrack right now. And oh, no, the camera's looking completely the other way. But nonetheless, 8% should be enough.
I thought that was the end of the tunnel. I was like, what are they going to do?
I thought they were killing the last pack there, and I was like, there's no way this is 11%. But I think 8% should be suffice here for this last pack.
Yeah,
so
they should be fine.
Oh, so they should be all right. Sunsky, of course, now just starting to work at the beginning of this log, and they should be getting their 100% there, and I think they're kind of getting ready to skip that last pack. They have to kill these bats, which will complete their 100%, of course, but the pack that CBA is currently working on the right side of the screen will be skipped by Sunsky, and we're going to have only a 1 death, 5-second differential between these two teams, which are both converging in on shade of one-shottiest.
It's suddenly getting very, very close here, though. As you have noted, only that 1 death, and now these guys are dead equal in trash as well. All of a sudden, we got a real race on our hands in this first map. This is probably the highest stakes matchup of the day. The team that wins this will be going to the first ever Mythic Dungeon LAN. And now we're just waiting to see who is going to be the first one to pull Xavius. Make sure we don't get turned around in these tunnels again. Yeah. Very scary moment.
Really disorienting us. I mean, I wasn't seeing any light at the end of that tunnel. So Sunsky now dealing with the last of the bats here, reaching that 100% in just a moment. 98, 99, 100. There we go. They'll be skipping this last pack. I don't know if they're going to invis through it or if somebody's going to kind of pull the trash to the side while everybody else safely goes through. But they are going through nonetheless, looking like it is those invis pots in the end, safely going through, not risking that extra death or maybe even more than 1 death for the couple seconds. And CBA just now finishing their trash too, but it looks like they only hit 98%.
It looks like they are still a little bit low. They might have to actually move backwards in that nightmare tube, but they're going to decide just to pull the boss right now.
Unfortunately, you can't really move backwards because once you jump,
there's no track.
Like once you jump in here, you've logged in completely, and you cannot get out of the stump of this tree. So the only way to actually backtrack and get some of that trash is to release and pull it from the top, or maybe the Demon Hunter can kind of get something going with a double jump. But at this point, they start 2% behind on trash, and both teams are starting on shade right now.
They're going to have to do some weird trigonometry if they are going to be able to actually find this additional trash right now, but we got to just focus.
Rich, honestly, man, just leave it alone, okay? So, now, Shade of Xavius, as we discussed earlier, has a ton of one-shot potential. Nightmare Bolt, casting on one of the random targets in the group, will do a huge amount of damage and add a 20-second debuff that puts a purple ring around the player. pacifying them unless one of their buddies helps them by standing in the ring. Also, there's a dot that needs to be dispelled. Jack is very fond of that, I know, in the back. Want to make sure you get rid of it right away. And of course, there is a channeled dot on the players that does a ton of damage. Has to be just power healed through, sometimes with a CD. But Rich, one of the most dangerous points in this boss, of course, is that 50% explosion.
And also, we're getting to that intermission at relatively even times for both of these squads, so expect to see every single health bar on your screen decimated. We have to see which team, though, is going to be able to deal with it better. And it looks like the Rogue actually, oh, that's actually going to be an early death here. The battle res is going to come out, need to top up the entire team before we get to that 50% mark. Even with that death coming in, CBA still pulling slightly ahead on the boss. Keep in mind, though, they don't have enough trash, to our knowledge, to be able to close out this dungeon.
Yeah, you know, I was kind of like trying to look around the screen. I was like, did they MC something I don't know about? Is there some kind of mind control and slave going on? I mean, maybe there is. I haven't seen it. I certainly haven't heard about it before, but, you know, I mean, we'll have to keep an eye on it. I'm hoping they just didn't. Oh my God, another one shot going down. Immediate battle res. That's an extra 10 seconds on the clock. While in the meantime, Sunsky, everybody alive and healthy. You do see that paranoia cast on the mage finally fading on the left side of the screen. Of course, if anybody steps in that, it will nuke that player and fear them for a substantial amount of time.
I wonder if the DH has Netherwalk. That's actually going to be another death coming in here. This is going to be the mage. I feel like this is one of those scenarios where everybody is trying to use all. They're saving all their immunities. They're saving everything for this intermission. Now the mage is going to sit this out. Not going to wait for the intermission.
On both sides.
Both sides, same time. Who will fall? We already have one death. The Rogue able to stay up.
Alive.
Everybody's staying up. Everybody's staying up. And now we can see the Disc Priest quickly able to get everybody up. These teams definitely neck and neck on this boss. The mage waits to actually accept that res, then pops back up after the intermission. And now these teams should be okay. But the main thing to think about with CBA is they've been having a hard time with a lot of these things. And now they probably use most of their big defensive cooldowns, Ted.
All their battle reses are gone. We still have that questionable 2% trash missing at the moment, and they added some extra deaths to the timer. So they, even if the trash wasn't an issue right now, they would have to kill Shade of Xavius by 20 seconds or faster in order to beat Sunsky here, which I just don't think is going to happen with how close they are.
AKA more than 3%, because that's what it comes down to on the race of the boss meter. And Shade of Xavius should fall at relatively similar times. And if that is the case, Sunsky will be taking this first game. They are trying to get the rematch in the grand final. They were sent down here.
Yeah, I mean, Sunsky's just catching up at this point, Rich. I mean, that 3% that you were just talking about, they're starting to close that gap just a bit. Actually, once again, it's reopened, but they're kind of hovering in that 1 to 3% range. Clearly, CBA is not pulling ahead in terms of that single target damage. We do see that cheat death come up from the Rogue on the CBA side. It looks like this one's going to go in the favor of Sunsky.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is if they do get this rematch, oh, actually, they're going to get a death, but they still have the battle res, so they can get the warrior right back up into the fight. And still, though, it is 11 deaths on the side of CBA to Sunsky's 8, so that shouldn't be a problem for Sunsky. They just need to keep moving about this one. You can see some big shields coming out here from the Disc Priest. I hope that makes Jack happy.
Yeah, easy absorb for the Nightmare Bolt on the Disc Priest there, and I'm sure Xavius has at least 1 or 2 stacks from these swirlies falling on the ground. Those do damage players, but of course, if they do connect with the hitbox of Xavius, it will give him 5% damage while stacking up to 10 times. I believe lasts about 8 seconds, so it will fall off eventually as long as he doesn't chain too many of them together. Shade of Xavius actually going down for CBA right now. And I think this is where they realize what's happened.
Oh, man. That is a rough situation. It does look like they're a little bit stumped right now. They need to find something to take down if they want to complete this dungeon. And ultimately, Sunsky going to close this one out.
Yep, we do have confirmation, of course, that it is Sunsky that win the map. CBA, unfortunately, narrowly missing out on that trash. That was an absolute treat, by the way. Thank you so much for all your puns. It was very punny.
I'm legit exhausted.
Yes.
I mean, Rich made an entire cheat list.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cheat list, I must admit. But, I mean, hey, it was a treat for everyone at home. Anyways, I think the real victors out of that, like probably not many of the people at home, to be honest, but Sunsky did manage to take that map. They win it 1-0. The Discipline Priest coming out strong in that one. I mean, it was kind of a close race, though. Like, it started a little slow for CBA, but it was really that wipe on Oakheart that made it more competitive, Sloot. Absolutely.
And we were just talking about it. We kept touching on it right before we got to him, that AoE Stomp, these one-shot mechanics. We said it before the match. Watch out for the AoE Stomp on Oakheart. And at the end of the day, they just couldn't keep up. But it wasn't just the Stomp that really finished them off. They started to fall behind what we were mentioning as well with the roots. The flowers started breaking out, and they just weren't on good kind of ad duty on the boss, which led to some explosives getting out of hand as well, combined with some of that extra AoE damage.
Yeah, and I mean, I had it in my notes because, I mean, CBA were looking ahead for a long time there before they had that slight miscalculation. They definitely had the lead going into the third boss, and I was saying, like, looking at the DPS meters, the warrior just wasn't pulling his weight. Why don't they have the Windwalker? But in the end, it works out for them, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, that trash miscalculation is going to be something that they're probably kicking themselves over. Even if you were on a dungeon that, I mean, look, this is probably the worst dungeon to have that happen on, as we already mentioned, because you kind of get in a position where you just can't get back to any of the baddies to actually take them down. But even without that, it would have taken too much time. Having miscalculations like that, it really can't happen in the losers final.
Yeah, you really can't afford it. But SunSky are the team that take that first map. Now just one game away from qualifying to the Mythic Dungeon Invitational live event, the first of its kind. The global finals will be played here live in America, and all these Chinese teams, of course, want the free flight courtesy of Blizzard. SunSky are one game away from that. They're one game away from getting to the grand finals, getting the rematch against their opponents, the #1 seed. But we'll have to find out if they can do it after this final break. Welcome back, everyone. This is an important time. Sun Sky just one game away from qualifying to the global finals. I am your host, Adrian Healingstad Archerlock, and joining us are our punny team of panelists. Does that work? Sure, why not?
That's why let us handle the puns.
I'll let you guys handle the puns, but yes, we do have an exciting moment, of course. The global finals just one game away for Sun Sky, all sunny skies for those guys. But CBA, who have had such a close one, they've really had a great tournament so far. They didn't come in as the strongest seed. I believe they were number 4. They lost in round 1. They've really came all the way through that lower bracket, now just one series away as well. And I mean, they're looking for the reverse sweep here, and they do have the map choice, Lou.
I mean, map choice is theirs. I think we're going to Lower Kara, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a fortified setting. Pretty scary once we're hitting the fortified. There's lots of dangerous trash in that dungeon too. So, but you know, I mean, they have to have something up their sleeve. It's their counter pick, and you know, we haven't seen them pick too many of those kind of safe, generic dungeon combo affixes, dungeon affix combos, excuse me, earlier. So, I mean, they got to be ready for this one.
Adrian, I think one of the big things on my mind right now for CBA, you already alluded to the fact that they dropped down to that losers bracket. They have had to play just so many series. If I look at the loser bracket, they probably, if they drop it in the first one, they've already played, what, 4 series in the losers bracket, something like that? I don't know, I'm terrible at math, but the big thing that you have to think about is, so are they at this point, right? They don't pull enough trash in that dungeon, and now all this
Whoa. They're the top 3 team in China, right?
No, I'm just being, I'm being frank right now. The reason that I bring that up is because now you're in a situation where you've played so many dungeons to be able to even get to this point. Now you have probably one of the most disappointing losses that you really can have. How do you not go on tilt against a team that already has been so strong, that's just looking for that rematch, looking to qualify here? That's really what I'm scared about for CBA. But if they are going to be a team that gets to the land setting, they need to show that they do have the resolve to do something like that.
Yeah, and it's something that we will have to watch for in this next map. We can get the confirmation of the maps now up on your screen. And the third affix has been selected as Grievous coming out here. So definitely going to be an interesting key here. We'll have Grievous, of course. You already talked about the fact that we will have that fortified setting. And then finally, of course, we have the volcanic. So Sloot, what are we really looking for here? Why do you think CBA have selected this one?
I mean, nobody's really too worried about the volcanic, you know. Just move. But
I would be worried about it, but just
the Grievous is something that can, I mean, Grievous can always just spiral completely out of control in any of this trash, right? You know, especially looking at somewhere, not even just the trash, but something like Morose, or you find the trash leading up to Adam, and there's lots of residual damage going on all over the place. It could be pretty tough for the healer sometimes to just fall behind that Grievous on top of whatever other damage. You know, we're talking about the flashlight from the ushers as well, so lots of extra damage in this fortified setting coming out. I mean, the pennies from heaven, the coin tosses pre-Kara, all the stage trash under the stage trash, lots of dangerous stuff coming up. And just because of the multipliers on the health numbers and the damage numbers, they really have to be very pinpoint with their CC and interrupts to make sure that they kill them. It's very much kill or be killed with a lot of the trash in this dungeon.
Yeah, one of the big things that think back to the last MDI, think back to NA. There was a team that this was their best dungeon, straight up.
Yeah,
this was their best dungeon. We saw them practice the craziest strategies. They looked phenomenal in this dungeon, and all of a sudden they get there in the MDI and it all falls apart. This dungeon is not forgiving at all, and even the best teams that have practiced this so much, we have seen have difficulty. So I do like the pick coming out here, but it is a volatile pick as well.
Yeah, it's something where we'll have to see how CBA perform. We already alluded to it just a little bit, that there is a lot of pressure coming in here, and of course with that volcanic affix, you really have to make sure you don't erupt under the pressure in a game like this. This is all to play for. If you lose this series as CBA, you are out of the competition. You get your $3,000, but you don't get your flight to America. Everyone wants to be here at the global finals, and this could potentially be the final resting place for this team.
Wouldn't want it to be not exactly the nicest of venues. Now, of course, Rich, right off the bat, just like in the previous Lower Kara earlier in the night, we did see that right away these blood DKs do immediately kind of control undead on the spirits at the start. We do get the math stealth, and of course they will be skipping this upper balcony. Now, for the 2 teams that we saw earlier, one ended up killing the lower balcony area, while one just kind of invised and pushed ahead to the opera event.
Wow, this is going to be a big pool coming in here, and like you said, we're kind of seeing the same thing play out. It's almost like history is repeating itself itself here. Sunsky, though, doing a very good job with this first pull. Obviously, we already alluded to the pennies from heaven being quite scary. But oh, wow, the death's actually going to come in on CBA here. One of the things I want to note is you kind of want to push up and get someone to start that RP. It's a very long RP, so the quicker you can get that going, the better. I also did want to note, before we talk about everything that is unfolding, having that Blood Death Knight get that initial control out on that mob just saves you so much time because they're so inefficient to deal with as well.
Yeah, they have so much health. They're kind of mini-boss style to a certain extent, and there's only one of them. There's no efficient cleave, nothing. There's nothing else you can kind of chain them into. We're seeing a couple of deaths on both sides here, one on Sunsky, two on CBA's side, and it is part of the strat that they're implementing, of course, trying to skip here. Sunsky opting to do a bit more of the trash, whether voluntary or not at this point, is questionable. And in the meantime, we do see CBA setting up for this Opera event, which of course is the same one we saw earlier with the Beauty and the Beast event, with all of the enchanted kind of kitchen appliances essentially in the broom.
And that's kind of how it is going to go, right? So on any given weekend, I believe that we will see, if we jump into Kara here, if we jump into this dungeon, we will see the teams go through the same Opera event, but I'm assuming that it actually can change in future weekends. Just a little tidbit to think about as you do think about everything that's going to happen in the MDI. We got another 3 weeks, another 3 regions after we crown our champ in China this weekend, so plenty more MDI action happening before we even do get to the land. But now, Ted, we are going to see the pool come in now. What do they got to worry about? There's a bunch of sharp stuff flying around.
So now, most importantly here is that Luminor, Mrs. Cauldrons, and of course Bablet, the broom there. Lots of different strategies on which one you kill first. Mrs. Cauldron doing a bunch of nukes randomly that constantly need to be babysat with interrupts. They're opting to kill her first as a result of not wanting to do that. Bablet, of course, that broom sweeping around the room. If that fixate does catch it, will disorient it, doing a bunch of damage. And lastly, Luminor is the one that is providing all of this real estate and kind of area denial reduction with the fires around the room. So it's not very efficient, of course, to cleave them down unless it's benefiting your single target, because as soon as you kill one of them, everyone else will heal back up to full, and you'll have to kind of restart the process. Sunsky here just a bit behind, only now killing Mrs. Cauldrons.
Yeah, and that was the thing. We saw Sunsky. If you actually look at the damage meters, it's like, yeah, they're pumping, but the thing is like you said, it wasn't as much efficient damage as you would really like to see. On the other hand, the Subtlety Rogue's going to be getting a lot of cleave damage, but it's actually more efficient because that Shuriken Storm, all of those combo points can be invested into one target. You just eviscerate, and now all of a sudden they're going to already be dropping down 2 of these appliances. Now they got a few more to deal with, but ultimately Sunsky is falling behind, and we're starting to see maybe why CBA did pick this dungeon, but they're losing some real estate here.
Yeah, but don't forget Sunsky, I mean, it doesn't look like much right now. Sunsky only has 1 less death on the board, but that 5% trash, because of some of the times we've seen, there's a lot of trash in this dungeon that doesn't give a lot of percent. So
yeah,
every bit of percent really might count at the end of the dungeon, so that could be immensely beneficial for Sunsky by the end. Nonetheless, regardless of the fact, rather, that CBA is slightly ahead now. They are finishing up Bablet here in a moment. All the fire has despawned on the map, and they will be dealing with Coggleston. In the meantime, Coggleston, of course, will summon 2 of those forks in the meantime, and he has 2 important casts. One of them debuffing the tank with increased damage taken, and the other one, of course, increasing the haste of his surrounding allies by, I believe, 100%.
And now we can see right now Bablet is close to falling for Sunsky, so that is looking good for them. They're starting to catch up, and as you already did note, Ted, they do have that extra bit of trash, so it is still anyone's race, and this is a long dungeon as well. It's the next few trash pools where we can really maybe see a team either pull ahead or get punished.
Yeah, I mean, the trash pools here are very make or break, and there's some really dangerous ones coming up. But you know, at any point in the dungeon, really, you think about the trash before Maiden, the trash in Morosa's room, all of the adamant trash. There's a lot that could just go wrong so quickly on Fortified in this dungeon on level 24 at their gear level, but that's why they're here. These teams have been practicing, so we'll see exactly how they perform. I'm sure they have their, all of their routes planned out. They practiced it a ton, but as you mentioned last year at the MDI, you practice it a ton. It just goes wrong in the blink of an eye, Rich.
And the other thing, too, is we can see inside of this dungeon, this is one of the dungeons where you really can see groups do incredibly unique strategies like this right here, running up that ramp, getting those extra pulls that you really don't need to go for. Going to move in, get that LOS pull, try to get them all into the corner, and they are going to go massive here. They're going to need to get out a lot of different control here, and they're going to try to go for some big AoE damage.
Right, you are. So CBA ramping up the pulls here indeed. Now, it's important with these mobs that you kind of get out of the spotlight, and especially out of the swirly explosions by the time that they go off. Otherwise, they will likely one-shot you in this fortified setting. Now, we do see that Rogue dipping very low there. Does not have that cheat death available, so luckily no death there in the meantime. Moving along, Sunsky finally getting to this backstage VIP access that everybody dreams of. In the meantime, CBA now going to some of the most dangerous trash in the dungeon. It's going to require really spot-on CC and interrupts. You want to make sure not a single Firelands portal cast goes off here, otherwise it will be devastating.
This was the area that everything went wrong when I was talking about last time. Yeah, this is where it could just go wrong, especially on a 24. You miss one kick, and your entire group is just going to be kaput. And now we are going to see that from CBA. And once again, it is scary. This is the group that actually did pick this dungeon, and it doesn't matter how well prepared you are. You just slip up for a second, and all of a sudden, it is slowly going to move away from you, and this is going to be Sunsky's opportunity to catch up.
Luckily, CBA has actually killed all of the casters. So between the DK kiting, who actually just did proc Purg, and the DH doing some extra damage on the remaining mobs, they are able to kill the rest of the trash. I'm not sure if they got a failure protection pylon down. It looks like they did. So I think they will. Yeah, they did. Okay, so they will be able to res up there. So luckily, it wasn't a full wipe, and they can continue along this path. But it just allowed Sunsky to pull ahead now towards the Ushers.
I mean, for something going bad, it went as good as it could go, right? I mean, you don't have to actually run back. You can get everybody up. You only have a couple deaths come in. They only have 5 at the moment, and you get the casters down. But there's still a huge investment here, obviously, to time, but also because losing that Purg can be scary. Cheat death isn't going to be available. We can very easily see this Rogue fall again here. There, that's that. Rogue going to go down. That's 6 deaths now for CBA on their own map pick, as Sunsky's just strolling along like it's a sunny day here in Karazhan.
Absolutely. Then they have their healer go down as well on Team CBA right now. Nothing is going in their favor at the moment. They're really going to have to focus on. The problem is if any of these DPS get into that, if the Demon Hunter, actually the Demon Hunter will be fine if they get into that Grievous. They should be able to heal right above 90%. So once again, it's just the DH and the DK just finishing up the rest of the trash, whilst in the meantime, the healer and the rogue just kind of have to sit there dead, and it looks like the mage is now just finally starting to catch up so that he can also help along with some of that damage.
Man.
And in the meantime, Sunsky moving quite flawlessly. They deal with the Usher packs, they turn around well for their flashlight spells, and they make sure that they don't get disoriented, no extra damage. They kill them nicely, and then they go over into the next room, start pulling some of this extra guest trash. And of course, we do have to be careful with the valets and the servants. Bit of extra health on those, and they have some interruptible casts, such as the demo shop that they actually fail to interrupt, that do go out on the melee, as you can see, which decreases your damage done. So you certainly don't want that.
Yeah, you definitely don't want that at all, and you can see that that debuff is still there. But I want to point out just how nice they're dealing with this Volcanic. We mentioned that Volcanic is going to be one of those things that it's not that scary of an affix, but it is really nice when you have someone like a Fire Mage here. You see the Fire Mage is going to go in there and actually get that Dragon's Breath out, so it is going to be the healer that has to deal with it. But Fire Mage just very mobile, so Fire Mage has been able to move back and forth. It's almost like the Volcanic truly isn't there.
Yeah, no problem for them at all. They'll be moving over, obviously, towards the Maiden trash now. A lot of dangerous trash in this hallway as well. I gotta start saying a lot of dangerous trash, because the entire dungeon has a lot of dangerous trash, but there are some notables here, such as, of course, you do have the frontals, the shield slams that will stun anything in a cone in front of the mobs for, I believe, 4 seconds, and some of the debuff that play on each other with these hostesses and maidens can do a substantial amount of shadow damage, which is why they opted to pull them together, pop some CDs here, and get a lot of that CC and just get rid of them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many scary trash mobs in here. Obviously, we already did see those Fireland portals go off. You got different things like the Ushers, and you know, you really do got to let it burn against them. But now they're finally going to be able to get their way to Maiden. Sunsky looking very good here. Ultimately, they only have that 1 death, and the main reason that they had that death is because they were just trying to go fast on that beginning trash, trying to get straight to that boss. Now CBA just going to have deaths continually pouring in. I feel like every time I actually look over on that screen, they just have another player down, and that player has to wait until they clear the trash bomb. Everything's just getting slow. They might end up getting full screen here.
I mean, you do have looks that could kill Rich, and obviously that's the case with CBA as one more player goes down there in the meantime. You know, they haven't really wiped or anything like that, but they are having just this constant sloppiness, 1, 2, 3 deaths per pack, every other pack. It's adding up a lot. Not just the time that is added with the 5 seconds per death, but also the amount of time that it takes to then kill the pack with 2 or 3 members, res, and keep going. The tank actually ends up going down here. The rest of the group scrambling to finish that last mob, while in the meantime, Sunsky now pulling the second boss that they opted to go for, the Maiden of Virtue.
And yeah, the Maiden of Virtue, this is going to be untyrannical. This fight can get a little bit tricky, but the main thing that you got to be looking for here, going to actually be, this is the effect right here, is essentially going to make a consecration on the ground that's going to be growing. At a certain point, boss going to actually, you're going to need to dip in to that consecration, Ted.
Yeah, you want to make sure that when that Mass Repentance goes out, you have some source of damage or an immunity coming in on you. It doesn't have to technically be that consecrate, but that's just the way technically the mechanic's meant to do. So the second consecrate, going out, we will be seeing that Mass Repentance cast on the players soon. At that time, the Maiden will, of course, shield herself and cast, and I'm going to one-shot your entire group spell, so you have to break through that shield and then interrupt the spell. Now, of course, we are in a fortified setting, so it shouldn't be too hard for these players to break through that shield and interrupt, but, you know, anything can happen in some of these maps. Mage dipping quite low there. Looks like the Disc Priest is having a bit of a struggle to catch up with the Grievous stacks between him and the Mage. Mage now sitting at 5, the Priest now at 5 as well. Just can't seem to get past that 90% HP threshold, and in a moment they're going to drop another Sacred Ground as well. But, I mean, CBA, another 2 deaths on the board, 10 deaths now.
Yeah, and their tank was one of the ones that fell that last time. They're still kind of struggling along. They haven't even really, I think they're getting to the, taking a peek now. You can see that they're at the hallway before Maiden. They're 10% behind in trash. They should be able to catch up when they actually do get this pulled down, and now Maiden of Virtue slowly starting to fall here to Sunsky. Looking very good. We already basically gave you the TLDR of the fight. The main thing that you got to pay attention to is just kind of moving in and out. When the boss does stun you up, you got to make sure that you're taking that damage so you can get that shield off in time. Otherwise, that is going to be a wipe. But
yeah, so here's that Mass Repentance. Now, the problem is that once you touch that Consecrate, it does a fairly heavy dot to you. Combined with that increasing Grievous stack, you're seeing that the Priest is having a hard time catching up, putting a huge shield on the Warrior, another one on the Mage. They're both sitting at 5 stacks of Grievous. Finally, the Consecrate debuff does wear off, and the Priest is able to finally catch up. Maiden of Virtue now at 15%. I don't think they'll obviously be getting a third Mass Repentance phase, so they'll be able to finish her off and start moving over to Morosa's Trash, while in the meantime, of course, finally, CBA is caught up. Well, caught up at least in terms of, you know, progression through the Raw Dungeon, and they pulled Maiden of Virtue as well, but they're still at the 78% mark with 10 deaths on the board.
Yeah, I mean, they're 45 seconds behind because of those 10 deaths compared to the only one of Sunsky, and now Sunsky going to be moving through this dungeon trying to get up to their next boss, and they've just been doing a very good job, and I want to reiterate, this isn't their pick, and they can close the series out here on this map, but there's plenty more opportunities to make mistakes in this dungeon. And, you know, I think this is really some of the hardest pulls that are going to be coming up here. And not in this room in particular, but right now one of the things that you do want to look out for are these blueberries, of course.
Yeah, the Arcane Wardens, I mean, they will do kind of a small area denial on the players, and of course the swirly on the ground. You want to make sure you move out with the circles. They don't do too much damage, but more so the swirlies on the ground are the ones that you will typically hurt the players a fair bit. Of course, the rest of the trash in this room, not too bad. The guests you saw, obviously, they pretty much evaporated once they were pulled. I'm surprised that they're not pulling the third Arcane Warden towards that kind of living, or the dining room area in Morosa's room. But I'm assuming that is because, like we've seen some of the other Chinese teams too, once they down Moros, they're actually going to end up going through the kitchen area rather than that dining room area down the stairs. So I'll assume that's why, because the Arcane Wardens aren't really particularly dangerous, just more of kind of a health dump right now.
Yeah, and the other thing, like we said, this isn't going to be the scary room, but when they actually do go to the stables, that's where it can kind of get a little bit unstable to actually have those pulls. A lot scarier trash can come in, but they're going to go for one of these big pulls here, and now ultimately they should be able to. I wonder how they're actually cycling their heroism here. That was the one thing that I did want to note. We've seen that's always kind of one of the big changes that we can see between groups, how they actually do decide to use their heroism. Do want to note now, before we get into that, CBA about to take down the Maiden, but they already do have another death to one of their DPS, and it looks like that rogue is getting chunked as well.
And Rich, you and I talk about this all the time. They do well here not to use that battle res. They do have one available, of course, but the Maiden was at 6% when that death happened, so no point wasting that res. They will incur the slower kill at the very end, get that res up, and then move along onto Morosa's room as well. And as we saw, Sunsky did pull out of the kitchen. They wanted to see exactly what was for dinner for Morose's dinner party here, pulling all the chefs, making sure no more table delivery will be had. And here they're going to CC what I assume would be two of the dinner guests from Morose, just like we saw earlier. Crispin, as we mentioned in some of the series prior, is one of the more dangerous guests, as he does have a massive frontal holy cast, which you can displace with something like, let's say, a Typhoon from a Druid, which they don't have the option of, but it can be displaced. But of course, you want to make sure you're somewhat in melee range. They actually end up CCing him first, grabbing the other two. You got to be careful for Druger as well. He does have a whirlwind to him as well, which is kind of denial for the melee. We do see finally as well that Heroism go off.
And Morose is also going to be dangerous in and of himself, going to be vanishing, jumping out on people and putting that bleed on them. You can see the first one actually is going to go out onto the Disc Priest. That can get a little bit scary when you got Grievous as an affix as well. We actually saw a little bit earlier on when Team No Healer was going up against Morose. They dealt with that mechanic beautifully, but now all of a sudden this Priest just having a hard time staying up, yo-yoing quite a bit. The tank going to yo-yo for a second there as well, so very hard to get that Grievous off when you got the bleed, and now the Mage has it as well. And look at these guys, Ted, they just cannot get healthy.
He just cannot past that 90% threshold. He's struggling so hard. The Mage sitting at 5 stacks plus the Garrote 2, about to drop here. The Priest finally getting rid of that first Grievous stack, but dips right back in because the Garrote takes him just below that 90%. It's giving you a really scary fight for that Disc Priest. They got to get as much damage on Morose as possible, but they still have the remaining dinner guests to deal with, which inevitably will be broken out by Morose, if I'm not mistaken, at 60 or 65%. So they're going to have to deal with those guests. I mean, Crispin is coming, and he's feeling crispy. There's Ference right now. Got to watch out for him as well. He's not as dangerous as some of the other ones, so they deal with him as well. Did they already kill? Oh no, there he is. Okay, so we do see that huge frontal from misread. So Crispin is indeed in action. You did see that huge frontal. Want to make sure you're avoiding that. But in the meantime, I mean, this Disc Priest is finally doing well to stay on top of these bleeds, but constantly you're seeing everyone dip into that Grievous territory.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the immunity coming out of the Mage here, and from the first bleed, it started to look sketchy for this Disc Priest, struggling right now as more and more of these bleeds do come out. Everyone on the squad is going to be bled up. That immunity is going to take it off the Mage. The Mage should be the next one to receive it now, most likely, and there it is. That is going to be that bleed coming in, and now the Disc Priest needs to keep everyone up. Morose going to be at around 45% health. CBA, on the other hand, has managed to get the pull on Morose. They rush to this boss as quickly as possible. They're about even on trash. The deaths are going to be the biggest thing to think about.
Yeah, of course, we do see actually that CBA opts to pull Ference first and deal with him, Crispin, that is, getting rid of that AoE. In the meantime, we are seeing Morose finally go down quite low for Sunsky, but once again, the healer is struggling to keep up with some of these stacks. We do see some big absorbs going out. Of course, we will have a lot of health coming in from consumption every 45 seconds, for 15 seconds from that blood decay, getting that extra leech for the group. Finally, Crispin goes down for Sunsky on their side, and Morose should be going down momentarily.
Oh my goodness, this is such a scary situation to be in. They should be okay with only 4% health left, but the Mage gonna proc Harderize. My goodness, that one is getting a little bit sketchy, but finally they do get Morose down. Got to heal everyone up, and now they got to go on to pull one last boss, and they could close this out. CBA, though, they're handling this bleed very well with that Holy Paladin.
They are indeed, yeah, but they still have that 10 death differential, and Sunsky right now is down the boss. He is no Morose, so they're gonna go down towards the stables area for Adaman, the last boss, as you mentioned. Keep in mind, Sunsky did have that kind of extra 5% at the beginning of the dungeon before going to Opera. They are pulling the rest of this kitchen right now, getting what percent they can, and hoping to finish up and round out their 100% trash packs prior to pulling Adaman in the basement. Morose here, they're kind of ignoring, as you see, the CBA is actually ignoring two of those dinner guests and opting to just finish off Morose himself in a moment. Will go down, so they finish off the boss as well, and will be heading, as it seems, to that kitchen area in just a moment.
Hey, this is the big thing, though. This is where CBA is showing their mastery on this map. They were able to get Morose out of the equation very quickly. It is that death differential that is going to be the main place that we got to put our eyes, like you've already mentioned quite a few times. 50 seconds standing between these squads right now, but CBA has caught up quite a bit, and now as these two teams are going to start actually wailing on these horses, there's a couple of bucks on the line here, Ted.
Yeah, Morose or Lessos, there is about 50 seconds plus all of the differential between the two teams. Now, they do pull the entire kitchen, whereas you saw Sunsky earlier kind of deal with half the kitchen at once and then pull the other half, presumably to wait for that Bloodlust timer to come off CD. You see a bit of kiting here from CBA through the dining room where Morose was just freshly killed. Afterwards, they will jump down to the stable area, which we already find that Sunsky is aggroed.
Hey, I mean, right now you really do have to pony up. They want to rein it in at this point as they're actually jockeying for that first place position here inside of this dungeon. If SunSky's able to get that lead, they will close out this series. CBA needs to close the gap and get back out in front, or they will be eliminated in that third place. That is not where they want to be. That is the last team to not qualify for the LAN.
Right, you are, Richard.
It's the moment where I get to do that for us, Ted.
No, I know.
I wait for that.
Now, some of this
I
trash,
live for that.
some of this trash in this stable area, I mean, it can be quite dangerous, right? The horses can, obviously, if you're caught in their frontal charge, they will smack you pretty hard. They do an AoE stomp that does a bit of damage. The stable hands you want to watch out for. They do heal. They do cast a healing touch on some of the mobs. You want to make sure you're interrupting that. As you can see, they're kind of respecting the trash that exists in here. We did see some massive pulls earlier, and it looks like they may be actually getting ready for a massive pull right now in just a moment. Yeah. We'll see. They actually have an MC'd mob run in right now. As you can see, it looks like he's going to go in. He's going to aggro Midnight. This is really smart. If you aggro Adamant Midnight, it will pull everything in the stable to you. So they sent in an MC'd mob to make sure that obviously the tank didn't die in the meantime. Adamant was aggroed. He runs out here, gets despawned once he goes past this doorway, and they are able to pull the entire stable trash in a very stable manner.
This is beautiful, right? You have that line of sight. They run right to you. You see they get that massive AoE pull in. Everything's grouped up nice and easy. They just delete all of that trash. They only need 2% more. That's going to end up being really only one pull, but now most likely they're going to go straight for that boss. Just go for Midnight right now, and we got to talk about these mechanics here.
Their 2% is actually going to end up being this. Stable hand right now.
So the stable hand didn't even despawn. I thought that the stable hand would have come back with them. This may despawn the boss here as they actually do rain that controlled ad back in.
They should have done that a bit earlier, because that was a bit scary. What happened is they walked in as some of the AoE damage was going on from the boss, keeping them in combat, and the Grievous stacks took them all low. So luckily they do manage to reset the boss here, drop Feast down, and get themselves out of that Grievous immediately. In the meantime, CBA now also at 100% trash. They did a similar huge pull, and they've actually already aggroed Adamant.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that was really sloppy there for SunSky was the fact that they left that controlled mob up so long on the boss, and that will be the final 2% for them. But now all of a sudden we have a very big race on our hands. It is going to be 14 deaths all in all on the side of CBA. They're popping heroism though right now, and they are going to start this race onto Midnight. Midnight dipping very low here, but as we know, Ottoman will hop off his high horse.
Yes, Adamant does climb down indeed. Adamant will, they're actually melting him right now. Of course, keep in mind, we're not in tyrannical setting, but once Midnight reaches 100%, Adamant will saddle up again and jump on top of Midnight, getting ready once again to perform some of the first phase abilities along with those spectral horse walls, unless they manage to get Adamant low enough, which they don't here. So Adamant does remount Midnight indeed, and now we're gonna have to watch out for these spectral walls spawning. They will definitely one-shot you at this level, and they spawn usually about 30 yards. They can't spawn 30 yards away from the boss, so this is why everybody's kind of hugging the boss right now, making sure that they're not susceptible to one of the walls spawning right on top of them and one-shotting them. Adamant, in the meantime, at 48% for SunSky before he remounts up as well.
Yeah, we actually saw earlier today people get trampled by this mechanic. It is one of the ones that you don't necessarily expect to see someone go down to, but when you're playing in a setting like this, I mean, anything can happen, so you want to make sure that you are in that prime position to have the most time to react to those spectral horsies that are going to be running across your screen. But once again, CBA masterfully dealing with this boss. 14 deaths at the moment. Will they be able to close this out fast enough that SunSky will not be able to do it before that death differential?
Keep in mind, there's still that 2% trash for SunSky right now. Adamant just hitting 20% here. Should be able to fall in a second. No full play from them on either side. Once Adamant does die, Midnight will take, but also deal 100% increased damage until it is killed. In the meantime, SunSky just trying to get through that threshold on Adamant. In the meantime, Midnight finally reaching, Adamant falling, and rather Midnight reaching that damage intake phase. Once they kill Midnight, they are done, but there's also a 65-second differential between the two teams purely through deaths. So there's an extra 65 seconds that SunSky will have to kill the boss and go find that extra trash that they need.
Well, Ted, you know the math better than me as a tank. These still do have that mob controlled. When that gets released, is that going to be enough?
Where is it?
He's hanging out over here somewhere. Screen's really tiny for us.
You pointing at the screen does not help me, Rich, okay?
He's there, I promise. And the thing is, though, is 98%. Is that mob going to be the full 2%?
It's hard to say because we don't see the fractions on the percent, but that mob, I would assume at this point for SunSky, with how practiced they look, would be enough, but I really don't see the mob anywhere, Rich.
I promise. I just saw him a few seconds ago. I can see the chains float.
Never lied to me before, so I do believe you. CBA, of course, in the meantime being done, and we'll see if they release it in the meantime. There goes the stable hand. Only gets them to 99%, so they're going to need to run up right now. They have substantial time. Well, they have about 25 seconds in just a moment. They should be able to kill one last mob within the next 21 seconds. If they don't, we are going to
pull.
They got to pull something.
There we go.
If not, we're going to a game 3. They have 15 seconds to kill one mob, popping all of their CDs on these last centuries. Can they do it? 10 seconds left.
Here. They got to do it in 10 seconds. They're going to be able to close that out.
And that's that. That was uncomfortably close.
That was a lot closer than it looked at the beginning there. All of a sudden, we did really see CBA jump back into it on their map pick.
There was a couple of little iffy maths decisions, I think, coming out in that series, but ultimately SunSky are able to pull it. I mean, I was so impressed by their pull of the stables, especially. It was like, I mean, it was about as masterfully as you can do it, but Adamant, of course, at the end, he was adamant to punish them for it. Couldn't quite do it in the end. But now SunSky, they are our second team in the global finals, in the grand finals in our next series as well. And it was just such a great series, but credit to CBA, Rich.
I mean, it's just crazy how important math was, and not only this dungeon, math was just so important in this entire series. That makes me a little bit uncomfortable considering how bad I am at math.
Well, at least you got the puns on point, but we have to see, of course, China now. We get our top 2 teams, Salute. Looking at it on a kind of global level, how do you think China's performed thus far in this weekend?
You know, we just kept saying while we were in the green room and everything, I mean, just impressive all around. I mean, really, they're going to be big contenders on the global scale once we get to the globals in that late June time slot. They've been doing excellent, and I mean, Skyline D especially, extremely impressive. They're just a machine at the moment, and it's so beautiful right now to see SunSky lose to Skyline D earlier, dip down in the losers bracket, and they're just coming for revenge right back.
I mean, hey, look, last time it was pretty bloody. They weren't actually able to pick up a dungeon. We have to see if they have something figured out, because it is going to be a very different start when we actually do get into this key. This is going to be a very arduous grand final that we do have, a little bit reminiscent of some of the ones that we did actually see in the Mythic Day. There are some truly evil people creating these keys. That is a fact. That is a fact.
I have the pleasure of working with them on many a day, but now we have our top 2 teams. SunSky had a great performance there, but now they're going up against the Juggernaut. They're going up against Skyline D. We have our top 2 teams, but now they will have to fight each other once again. They join each other on the plane over to the USA to represent China, but we still have one order of business here. We have to find out who is the best team in China. That's what's up next. Stay with us as we will find out together. This is the Mythic Dungeon Invitational China Weekend. Now we find out who's best.